Welcome back, everybody. Dom, that was what are you motorboating over there, son? Welcome back to episode 174 of the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast. It's the weekend recap edition. It's Monday, January 24th, 2022. Dominic, you feeling a little antsy there, pal?
That's going to be one of the funnier intros we've had in 174 episodes, man. I'll tell you what, Noah, we're coming off UFC 270 on Saturday night. I'm just feeling a little funky from it. I don't know. It was a great card. It was a weird card. The main event was very interesting, to say the least. The betting side didn't go too great. Just what a night it was on Saturday. But, man, I'm excited. We're here for the weekend preview, 174, another closer to 200. It was a good weekend. Got to see a lot of old friends that I hadn't seen in a long time. Got to watch the fights. Got to watch playoff football. Noah, how are you doing? How was your weekend as we get into this new week?
Who day?
That's right.
Shout out to my Cincinnati Bengals AFC championship game where they will have to go up against either the Bills or the Chiefs. So it was a great season, everybody. We'll see you next year. No, I'm not saying that. I got faith in the boys. I put money on the boys back-to-back weeks. Got that money. Bengals money line against the Titans. Ooh. Oh, man. I knew the Titans were pretenders, boys.
Oh, my goodness.
Hey, shout out to Titans. No, Titans fans are very respectful. No disrespect. It was a great game. A great defensive game, I should say. If you're into that, both games yesterday – or Friday, I guess, or Saturday, now.
Yeah.
They were both just defensive struggles the whole time,
Yeah.
And, man, I was getting – my asshole was clenching up every time Joe Burrow took a sack, and that's going to be an issue. But it was still just unreal to see the Bengals not just win one playoff game, but now we've won another, and it's you don't know what to do with yourself.
Exactly.
I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know. But my mom and sister came to visit me here in Indiana, so we got to go out to this restaurant called Drake's. It's like a chain that basically is yet to get to Ohio, but it's like everywhere else around it. Mm-hmm. It's like Illinois, Indiana.
Kind of like sports
Kentucky.
betting.
Yeah, very true. And it's a sports grill. They're known for like smash burgers, which I had never had one before, but fantastic, by the way.
Yes.
But I'm like a wing guy, so I was so disappointed when there was like no wings on the menu. But the burger was really good, so it's fine. But
Good
there was a lot of Bengals fans at the restaurant. This is in Indiana, playing the Titans. There were a few Titans fans, but mostly Bengals. It was kind of nice. But
how about it?
Yeah, but ultimately, at the end, I ended my night the way I end every Saturday night.
That's right.
With fights. And UFC 270 was great. It was awesome. There was a lot of takeaways. And yet I sit here feeling like, I don't know,
it's weird.
It's not a bad feeling. Not just like this feeling of I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's like
I don't think there is a better way to describe it, if I'm being honest with you.
I wish I could put it into words, but maybe I think it's just it felt like going in that it was so clear the directions that this fight could result in, how the fight would end for either guy in the main event and kind of what that would mean moving forward, since we knew how big this fight was, not just for dynamics of title fights and whatnot, but, Ngannou with his ongoing contract situation. And I think the fight was so different from what we expected that it's kind of flipped it on its head to where I just have this feeling of almost confusion. I don't know. It's like everything I had thought up to this point is not really what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not really true. It's like I don't know. We'll get into it. But all in all, if you're feeling this similar, hang in there. We're gonna talk this
We're gonna
out
talk
together.
through it. Right.
But before we do, we got to get into those fight announcements, Dom.
We got some to go over here, huh?
This is a lot for a Monday episode, I would say. Let's start with Paddy Pimblett. Yes, we just talked about him on Friday, and damn it, Dana, this one is on him. For those of you that didn't see, Dana White had announced on the Dave Portnoy show that Paddy Pimblett would be on the London card on March 19th going up against Jared Gordon. And me and Dominic were very excited about that. We're like, wow, I was like shocked. I was like, Jared Gordon is a tough fight for someone like Paddy Pimblett who, has the star potential, has a lot of people starting to buy into him. But I would argue that he's flawed. He's good, but he's got potential, but he's still a prospect all in all, definitely needs to work his way up. And I thought Jared Gordon's a tough test for this guy in his second fight.
Yeah.
Well, the UFC must have agreed because they have pivoted, and Jared Gordon is not the fight. Apparently, when this was announced by Dana, the fight hadn't even been signed and apparently hadn't even been offered to Jared Gordon or Paddy Pimblett yet. Dominic, this is kind of a mess, but all in all, we get Paddy Pimblett versus Kazula Vargas. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't really know much about Kazula Vargas, to be honest with you. So that should tell you.
He's 1-2 in the UFC, I believe.
1-2
coming off a win.
Okay, fair point. So really, this fight kind of almost feels like another Paddy against Luigi moment, to be honest, in terms of the matchmaking here. When you do go from a guy in Jared Gordon who has been there with some tough guys in the UFC and 2 weight classes, he's a grinded out style fighter, now to Kazula Vargas, which seemingly stylistically just is a better matchup for Paddy. And I kind of discussed on our Twitter DMs, this is where we send back and forth all the fight announcements and stuff. It's where we garner our notes essentially for the show. And we were just like, and I saw a lot of people, not just us two, but a lot of people in terms of the discussion about this fight was it seems that the UFC is almost kind of making this to really build Paddy up more. And it's going to be in London. So it's a chance for him to really explode there with a quote unquote, because again, there's no guarantees in this crazy sport, but easy win, if you will. So, for what it's worth, Kazula Vargas, this is a big chance for him to really shut up the hype train, especially there in London. But this is a complete 180 from the fight we talked about on Friday with Jared Gordon. So, I'm interested, obviously, because it is Paddy Pimblett. I won't have as many takeaways this time around, being that it's not against a guy like Jared Gordon. Because if he goes out and beats a guy like Jared Gordon, we have a whole lot more to talk about that following Monday, whereas Kazula Vargas, it's just not quite the same impact.
Yeah, the reality is he's being protected by the UFC, and that's not a knock on him. I have no doubt that he accepted a fight with Jared Gordon. Like, I have no doubt that that was, he was ready to go. But I think the UFC, evaluating their options there, it makes sense. The fight's going to be in London. Mm-hmm. You got this guy who's really bubbling as like the star. He's signed with Barstool Sports. He's, it feels like, on this card, and we're going to talk about like the main event that got announced and stuff, but he's going to be like probably the opening fight of the main card or something. Mm-hmm. And he'll probably be the most talked about fighter on the entire card. So that tells you something about what kind of potential hype we're dealing with potentially there. So he's being protected, and that's fine. Jared Gordon might have been, a bit too much. I mean, truthfully, that might have just been, considering where I think Paddy is, I think he's above this at this point. I don't know. Kazula Vargas, like, no disrespect, but I believe he's 35, 36 years old. Kind of been unremarkable in the UFC, hasn't really done a whole lot. I feel like Paddy's a step above that, but Jared Gordon, is bubbling on the top 15. And you beat him, and like, to me, that would already be over-exceeding where I see Paddy Pimblett right now. Mm-hmm. So, because of that, I kind of am okay with them going a different direction, but I still think, like, here it's like, okay, feels like he's just kind of being given another opponent that they think he can easily dispose of, and we'll see if that's the case, because Luigi Venramini almost flipped that on its head.
Yeah.
But I also feel like maybe we should note that, like, the UFC has been criticized, Dana White specifically, over the last couple of years for announcing fights before they were official.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes and does it before a fight had even been given or discussed or offered to both parties. I mean, come on, what is going on there?
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen people say like it's almost like tactic to pressure, fighters into accepting certain fights and whatnot, and so. Well, whatever goes on behind the scenes, I do as as someone now who we talk about these fights, 2 or 3 times a week. We bring information to people. Some people maybe come to this show to find out fight announcements because they're just loyal Joey listeners. So it's like we're then presenting some of these fights that we're all excited about, and then literally in this instance, 2 days later, guys, sorry, we're still talking about Paddy, but it's a completely different fight. So it's weird, but again, maybe it is just kind of a tactic they use to pressure fighters into taking certain fights or not getting certain deals on a contract done.
I agree. I think that is kind of why you see Adesanya Whitaker 2 get announced and stuff. But this case, I do think it was kind of more incidental.
Yeah.
Dana being in the war room, I think he just looked over, saw
that.
Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon as like, and it was probably written on there as like a potential matchup.
Yeah.
And maybe he just thought it was official already or whatever. But really, there was no reason to do it considering they just went a different opponent a day later anyway.
Yeah.
So it didn't pressure Paddy to sign with Jared or Jared to sign with Paddy. I mean, it feels like it was just a kind of incidental, but still, you got to be a little more careful than that, of course. And, these guys, contract negotiations or fight negotiations, that should be held behind closed doors. Let's not air that stuff out in public,
Yeah, I agree.
Also on that same card, though, Dominic, we did have some shifting of the matchups. Shamil Abdurakhimov, the number 8 ranked heavyweight in the world, was originally scheduled to fight Tom Aspinall, a guy that you're a big fan of. He will now be going up against Serghei Pavlovich, maybe. It seems like Pavlovich, we haven't seen him in 2+ years now, and every matchup he gets put into, he seems to have to pull out of.
Yep.
But he's still ranked number 15. So you get 2 top 15 heavyweights on the card, but the reason that they went this direction is because Tom Aspinall's been boosted to the main event of the card going up against Alexander Volkov, Dominic. So do you think that this is that Tom Aspinall is ready for top 5 heavyweight action?
Ready or not, here he comes, right? I mean, this is again a guy where I talk about it almost every time he's brought up on the show. He always says that he's not in a hurry and he's okay with going fight by fight. He said, I'll pick out, I'll fight number 9, I'll fight number 8, 7, 6. I'll go all the way up the totem pole. But I think the UFC may have had something go on in one of those Tuesday meetings in that war room. And they're like, man, okay, hold on now. We're having this heavyweight title fight here in January. We don't know. It looks really shaky. Again, we're going to talk about that here in a few minutes. And now we have this guy fighting out of the UK from London. Let's boost him into his first main event slot. He's ranked number 10. We're putting him up against Volkov, who is another great striker, but a very tough test. It's a chance for Aspinall to really show out there and make a huge statement because as good as he is, 4-0 in the UFC, 4 finishes, he still really isn't talked about all that much. So this is really a huge jump here, a huge opportunity for Tom. I believe in this guy, as you know, and everyone that listens, but this is not going to be an easy fight by any means. A huge test, one that if he passes, all of a sudden that slow kind of roll he had, he'll be 5-0, but launched into the top 5 of the heavyweight division. So it's an interesting fight.
Yeah, I respect his mentality of just welcoming kind of the next guy in front of him. Like just, he's like, I think I'm better than all these guys, so I don't really care how they match me up. I'm going to beat them all anyways and get to the top. That's kind of been his mentality. I respect it. I do think, though, that since he is a fresh face that's very talented and has so much potential, the UFC are really wanting to see some of these fresh matchups in that heavyweight division. When you got guys like the champion Ngannou and Curtis Blades and Volkov who have fought seemingly everybody in
Yes.
this division. Rosenstruik, another one. I mean, these guys have fought seemingly each other and everybody else that you can think of. So for Tom Aspinall to be this fresh guy, but also has the ceiling to be a true contender,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of don't want to, you know, do the whole let's play one at a time. Let's
Yeah.
just get him. I think they're thinking let's just push him along a little bit.
Yeah.
Alexander Volkov will be an interesting matchup for him. Volkov is, one of those guys I can't really figure out how good Volkov truly is in the UFC. I think it's he's always a threat when it comes to a striking matchup. I mean, he's looked very good at times. His fight with Alistair Overeem, he looked terrific.
Yep.
But then, he's had some performances that he's looked less than stellar, and had performances like the Derek Lewis fight where he dominates for the whole fight until 30 seconds left. Lewis lands a bomb and he gets finished. And, his last outing, I believe, was Ciryl Gane last summer. And Ciryl Gane pretty much getting the better of him for 5 rounds, but he hung in there. So that shows that he can be, I don't know if at this point he's really like a title. I don't know if he's really like in the title picture anytime soon, but he at least feels like a guy like I could see him stringing together enough wins to where he could fight for a title. So that says a lot if Tom Aspinall can beat a guy like that, and to do it in London in the main event. You're right. Maybe he's been a little overlooked up to this point, considering how high his ceiling is. But I think after this fight, if he wins and does it in the type of fashion he's capable of, he's going to be like it's going to be a bit like Ciryl Gane, Dom. I mean, when we started this podcast, did we even know who Ciryl Gane was?
Yeah, that's how quickly he rose.
And literally 6 months later, he was headlining against Rosenstruik, and then 6 months after that, he was winning the interim titles. So that's how quickly things can change in the sport. And I think Tom Aspinall, if things go his way, could be
same
in
type
for a
of rise.
similar vote. Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Following that, a week later, March 26th,
we got another
Columbus, another ranked participant. Number 8, Neil Magny. He is not fighting Khamzat Chimaev.
Imagine.
He is fighting the unranked Max Griffin. So, Dominic, number 8 versus unranked Neil Magny, looking for that Khamzat fight. Doesn't get it. Gets an unfavorable matchup in terms of the rankings and whatnot.
Yeah.
Are you in favor of this one? Or you like this and the fact that it's being added to that Columbus card?
I'm definitely all for it being added to Columbus. Give me all the fights you want to add. Give me a 20-fight card for that. But, it's cool. Another ranked fighter added to the list. We get to see quite a few when we're at that card here in 2 months. But, Magny, a guy that's just been in the UFC for so long, and he's got so many wins and so many close fights, and just a guy that truly will fight anyone, and it shows again here. The guy that calls out Khamzat Chimaev, once a week, it seems like, you don't get him. But here's Max Griffin, who's a extremely hard matchup in his own right, unranked. So Magny coming into this, you got a lot to lose. You got your spot in the top 10, kind of any hopes of still hanging around contender status could go out the window here with the loss to Max Griffin. And for Max, the complete opposite. He can really launch in not only to the rankings, but be a top 10 guy, a super seasoned veteran in Magny. Griffin's been having some pretty good performances as of late too. A very exciting fighter, comes out and just kind of gets real aggressive in your face, but not too much to his detriment. He's not afraid to take some shots, to give some. And obviously that's not the type of style that Magny presents. So it could be a really interesting kind of play out here in this fight.
Yeah, when I saw this one, I was kind of puzzled. I didn't really see why this fight was being booked. I mean, Max Griffin has looked good as of late, but I wasn't necessarily thinking this guy was going to get a top 10 opponent in his next fight. So this, to me, considering Neil Magny was really pushing for a big-time matchup with Khamzat Chimaev and didn't get it, this is my only speculation here. And take this with a grain of salt. I'm just trying to have some fun with this.
Okay.
I think that this comes off like Neil Magny is taking a. I'm the word escaped me, an educated risk. He is taking a risk in that this could potentially pay off, where Neil Magny's been a guy that one of the reasons he's kind of not gotten those big matchups he's looked for is his fight style is not all that exciting. He tends to be very clinch heavy and kind of carry his opponents to a decisions. Doesn't necessarily have a lot of highlight reel performances in his belt, but he's very good. And I think that here with Max Griffin, it's a risk because of the discrepancy between the rankings. But if you can get that kind of performance against someone like Max Griffin, who, yes, is a lower opponent to who you've been facing, but if you can go out there and starch him, put on a highlight reel show, maybe then that'll open some doors that had otherwise been closed, just because maybe people would actually be like, whoa, Neil Magny might really be a threat. Maybe he's gone to the next level.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing I can think of, and I don't hate it for that reason. I mean, it's at the end of the day, if Neil Magny accepts it, I have no problem with, I guess, the matchup. It just feels like, if he's not complaining about it, then why should we?
Good point.
April 23rd. This is a fun one, Dominic. Jessica Andrade, the former strawweight champion, returns to the division that she once oversaw. She is the number one ranked flyweight contender, but appears to be going back to strawweight. And she goes up against Amanda Lemos at number 10. Lemos has kind of been on a bit of a roll as of late. She did have a very close fight with Angela Hill, but it was a banger of a fight. And she did get the judges' nods in that one. So Andrade started off really strong at flyweight. Caitlin Chukagian fight, nasty body shot. Then follows that up with the title fight with Shevchenko, where she got outclassed. And then she had a really nice performance against Cynthia Calvillo, but it kind of felt like, I think that the Shevchenko fight, I think, is really just kind of halted the brakes, or put the kind of, her momentum just got halted to a complete stop. So while we were both in support of her going to flyweight, do you now think that it's appropriate for her to go back to strawweight?
Yeah, I mean, at least for the time being, why not, right? I mean, this is the division, after all, where you held a belt. You're still going to be, obviously, held in a high regard for this weight class and how the UFC views you. But she is also welcoming the number 10 ranked fighter in Lemos. But Amanda Lemos also is riding some of the most momentum in this entire top 15 because she's on a 5-fight win streak. And with that win over Angela Hill, which, yes, was razor close, a split decision, this is still by far the biggest jump that she could possibly make right now in terms of this strawweight weight class. But if she were to come out and get a win over Andrade, hello, you're all of a sudden right in there with title talks amongst, the Zhang Weili's, the Joannas, the Carla Esparza, so on and so forth. So interesting fight here. I actually think it could be quite a banger, though. Lemos is very aggressive, likes to come out firing. And we know Jessica Andrade knows no other way than to do that. So it could be a super fun fight.
Yeah, you're completely right. It could be a lot of fun. And for Andrade, I mean, who knows how many it'll take her to get a title fight. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
She's got to win over the current champion, Rose Namajunas. Now, Rose got that win back at UFC 251, but now they're 1-1. There is a trilogy bout there. So, I'm not saying a win against Lemos is enough to get her a title fight at strawweight, but considering she's already a flyweight contender, was a strawweight contender and former champion before that, it's not going to take much for her to be right there again.
Yes, the career of Jessica Andrade is really one of the most unique in female weight class history.
One of the most fun fighters to watch in the female divisions.
Yes.
And I have no doubt that this fight will be another really fun one. But Amanda Lemos, big opportunity there for her.
Yes, for sure.
And she's not young, right? Isn't she like 35?
34. Yep.
34. So this is the opportunity she kind of needs, because
yes,
as good as she's looked and as much as she's kind of surging, she's on borrowed time in a lot of ways. Like, she doesn't have all the time in the world. I mean, maybe she's still fighting at this level at 38 years old, but more than likely that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's usually not been for most fighters. So For her to get an opportunity to go up against a former champion who's still one of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound, I think you take that every day of the week,
Oh,
even though the
100%.
risk involved.
Exactly.
Also on that card, a little bit more under the radar fight, Maycee Barber, Montana De La Rosa. They look to finally get this one into the octagon. Are you on board with that one?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Maycee is coming off of the win over Miranda Maverick and one that a lot of people thought she lost, including me. So she could technically be on a 3-fight skid right now if it wasn't for the judges' scorecards in that one. Montana De La Rosa, not as active as I would like her to be. She's had some kind of bad luck getting matchups booked. But recently, she has kind of started to correct some things in her game. She's still super young, and for that reason alone, I still believe she has a lot of potential in this 125-pound division as well. So that's actually a super hard fight for both women in which the way their styles will clash.
May 7th, UFC 274. This is the card that is rumored to be in Brazil. I don't believe that's confirmed as of yet.
Right.
But we do have our potential headliner for the UFC light heavyweight title. Glover Teixeira looks to make the first defense against Jiří Procházka, the modern-day samurai.
Oh, my.
Dominic, is this the matchup that you were hoping for to kind of welcome in Glover's title reign? And is Brazil the likely destination in your best estimation?
Yes and yes. How about that? This fight is the clear number one dude. Obviously, we know Rakic and Blachowicz are going to fight in March in Columbus. Knock on wood, we could see that one. So this makes all the sense in the world. Super tough fight for Glover, but a big test for Jiří as well because of the experience that Teixeira holds. Should it be in Brazil? Yes. Glover deserves it in his home country. To be there to headline a show in front of all those fans would be such a special moment for Glover. And if he were to win, my goodness, what a cap on top of this guy's career that he's already gotten. Yes and yes to both questions.
Yeah, this fight is awesome. I'm very much on board with Procházka getting a title fight. Glover Teixeira shocking the world by even getting into the title picture again, and then to win the belt against Jan Blachowicz, who had beaten the likes of Israel Adesanya and Dominic Reyes. So he had kind of, even though Blachowicz had really been the kind of feel-good story of,
yeah, exactly.
of that year, it was he had really shown, at least up to that point, that was like, wait a minute, Jan Blachowicz isn't just a feel-good story. This guy's actually like legit made a lot of improvements and is a better fighter than when he was fought less. He had more losses than wins at one point in time in the UFC.
Yeah, like 4 years ago. So it wasn't that long ago.
So it's just Glover being a guy. He fought John Jones for the light heavyweight title at UFC 172. I think it was
2013. I think.
Yeah, that's going to be over 100 pay-per-view events ago. So
yeah,
he gets to make his first defense here, and if he does it in Brazil, that crowd's going to be absolutely nuts.
Yes,
and hopefully they get a big title fight underneath it, and that card really fills out. But a great start here with Teixeira versus Procházka.
And last but not least,
a week later, May 14th, Viviane Araújo and Andrea Lee. Andrea Lee was on one of our list for comeback fighter of the year. She's really been making an impression. She's starting to, anyways. I think she made a believer out of you, and I think she's starting to make a believer out of me. But Viviane Araújo should have, in my opinion, I thought she beat Caitlin Chookagian.
Yeah,
she should be kind of knocking on the door for a title fight right now. Instead, kind of finds herself middling around in this group a little bit. So how much do you think this fight's kind of, in my opinion, a little bit bigger than it appears on paper?
Yeah, this is big for both because, Araújo, before that loss to Chookagian, was on a win streak of her own right, much like kind of Taylor Santos. They were both kind of rising together at the same time. Taylor was able to crack in. Viviane was not, but now here she is with Andrea Lee, who at one point was on a 4-fight losing streak, but like 2 of them were via split decisions, maybe even 3 of them. But now in 2021, she bounced back with 2 wins, both via KO, TKO. So again, as Noah said, she seems to be putting it all together right now. Her striking has always been great, but her grappling is really kind of going up to par with that as well. This is a big fight for both in terms of, can Viviane hold off a number 8 contender and still be within contender talks? And for Andrea Lee, can she finally become a contender after all this time in the UFC? Because when she first came in, that's what she was looked at as a future title contender, maybe title holder, because of how good she was on the regional circuit, faltered, and now is riding high again. It's an important fight.
I disagree with you on one part of that, and that's that I don't consider Viviane to be a contender right now. If she had beat Chookagian, no doubt, which again, I thought she did. But that's why I think this fight's so big, is because, or bigger than it appears, is because on paper, people look at this fight and it's kind of disposable. It's two people that I think most fans are going to assume are just kind of placeholders in this division. But really, you got Andrea Lee, who is looking better and better, and Viviane, who, in my opinion, should be basically the number 1 ranked flyweight, or number 2, whatever, ranked flyweight contender in the world. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody besides us see it that way right now.
Yeah.
So to call her a contender, I feel like would be strictly on our eyes, and I don't know if that's really what matters, because the UFC obviously don't value her as such. The fans don't appear to either. But I do think it's a bigger fight because the winner is probably going to be due for something big next.
Yes, undoubtedly.
Let's get into the regional showcase, Dominic.
It's back, baby.
Jorge Masvidal's iKon FC1, the birth of a new promotion.
Yeah.
Moving, I'm sure for this promotion, obviously having Masvidal's name attached to it is important, but iKon FC is going to be the name going forward. But the birth of a new promotion, Dominic.
Yes.
So this is the first time we've gotten to do a new promotion on the regional showcase. How did it go for you? What was your big takeaway from watching this card?
Well, it felt very brand new. I mean, it had a lot of fighters on this card. It was a 7-fight card where they were 1-1, 2-0. Some were making their professional debut. Oh, but then, by the way, let's put Ciryl Gane in as the main event. A guy that's like 18-7.
One fight. That was the only fight that I had heard about for this card going in. And it's pretty obvious why now.
Yeah, exactly. But, I had fun watching this. The ring announcer, by the way, was phenomenal. Loved him. I can't remember what his freaking name was, though, so I feel disrespectful. But whoever you were, I forget your name. You were fantastic. But the show was good. We always like to talk about the production as we go through all these regional ones. And this one felt good, much like the other ones that we've seen. Nothing too, over the top or anything, but it also wasn't like Alaska FC. So it was a lot of fun down there in Florida. And when the fights are in Florida, we're going to be in for some interesting stuff. I mean, we had 7 fights here. 5 of them were via finish. We had 1 stoppage via leg injury. Ciryl Gane, the biggest name on the card, kind of had it was back and forth because it was 29-28, but it was just a pretty dull fight overall. A guy that, came into the UFC with some hype. He was built like a freak of nature, like a statue, but he went 1-3 inside the UFC, and now he's in Jorge Masvidal's iKon FC. So, it was a fun card. There weren't any huge takeaways. There weren't any title fights that we've seen on some of these other regional promotions. But nonetheless, the birth of a new show is still fun because you're seeing fighters get an opportunity, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So for that, Jorge Masvidal, you business mogul that you're becoming now, shout out to Gamebred for putting this show on.
Yeah, in terms of a production, I actually thought it exceeded my expectations. I mean, I knew when you have Masvidal's name attached to it and the UFC are debuting it on Fight Pass, you kind of were hoping it would be up to a certain standard. But then you see that the UFC has had Alaska FC on there for a long time, and they don't even pay their fighters apparently. So, anyways, it's I was very happy with the way the production looked. It wasn't anything special, but for first debuting promotion, very good, I thought.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's a lot of guys making their debuts or their second professional fight. There wasn't, a ton of guys that had a lot of experience here. I will give a shout out to SD Dumas. He had a very nice head kick KO, a nasty looking head kick KO.
Yes.
Happened about a minute into the first round. He's 26 years old. He's 5-0 now. And I kind of took a look at I'm doing it right now, where he had been previously. Nowhere that really will jump out, but still, for a guy like that who he's got 5 finishes in all 5 fights and 26 years old, might be a guy to keep your eye on potentially. And with a name like SD Dumas, I feel like I'm gonna anytime his name pops up, I feel like I'm gonna be like, oh, that's that guy. So
Yeah.
I thought it was a good debut for iKon FC. All in all, it was 7 fights, 5 finishes, like you said. Can't complain.
Exactly.
Now let's get into UFC 270, Dominic.
Oh,
I mean,
boy.
here's the bread and butter, right? I mean, this is the.
Oh, boy.
Let's start with that main event. Francis Ngannou retains his heavyweight title against the interim champion Ciryl Gane via unanimous decision.
Say what?
A fight that was mostly fought in the grappling realm, Dominic. Let's look at this fight as a whole, not just the 5 rounds we saw, but everything going into it. The outside factors, all the noise and the lead up, our expectations, the UFC's input, and that they're kind of at war, or not at war, but they don't. Them and Ngannou aren't the best of each other's biggest fans right now. And now the immediate aftermath. You take all of this into account. I want you to tell me right now, what is your biggest takeaway from really this week in UFC 270?
My biggest takeaway from UFC 270 in this week.
Sorry, I'm talking
this
about the
fight.
main event. Yeah.
Yes, this fight. Oh, boy. The confidence that Francis Ngannou had it himself was my takeaway. And we still got to see in this fight the evolution of Francis Ngannou's game. I mean, you look back, literally it'll be 4 years in March when he fought Stipe Miocic. He had this meteoric rise throughout the heavyweight division, was starching everyone, gets dominated in that first title fight, right? And then you have that one of the worst fights ever against Derek Lewis. He loses 2 in a row, and it's like, all right, well, maybe this guy's not quite all the hype that we thought he was. But then he tallies off 4 straight first-round KO TKOs to earn his title fight. Then in that fight with Stipe, he puts together the best all-around performance we've ever seen of him and still gets the knockout victory in the second round. By the way, thank goodness I don't have to see that highlight reel for a few months because they were doing my boy Stipe. I saw that way too much this week.
Yeah,
but and then he comes into this fight. He's fighting the near perfect coming in Ciryl Gane, 10-0, undefeated, phenom, interim champion. The tension, the build-up with him in the UFC, him and Fernand Lopez, even him and Ciryl Gane with, former experiences sparring together. And Francis came out and even down 2-0 on the scorecards. I thought he lost those first 2 rounds pretty convincingly, if I'm being honest. He couldn't really find
not a lot of people talking about that 49-46 scorecard and how absurd that is. But
yeah, it was.
I agree with you though.
Yeah, Francis could not find the mark. He couldn't touch Gane, which no one has been able to touch Ciryl Gane. So at that point, I'm like, oh boy, now we're getting into the 3rd round. We don't see Francis go here, What are we going to see? Is Gane going to pull away? Is he going to get an easy decision? Is he going to be able to finish the fight? Shout out to my nosebleeds bet that didn't cash along with my other ones. But then, round 3, Francis Ngannou with a freaking Matt Hughes style takedown over Frank Trigg against Ciryl Gane. A huge takedown, a huge moment. He holds top control. Huge 3rd round. Then, 4th round, he does it again. Another huge takedown. And I'm just like, what is going on here? We got a 2-2 fight going into the 5th. It doesn't get better than this. He finds himself in a sticky situation. Ciryl Gane takes him down to start the round. I'm like, uh-oh. This is what Gane kind of, he flipped a switch here. He recognized what he can do that he hasn't tried. But then Francis flips positioning, gets on top, escapes a heel hook submission twice, and finishes the fight on top. The evolution of Francis Ngannou's game, and Francis recognized that and had that confidence in himself. As you said on Friday so perfectly, he went all in. He put all the chips on the table for his career. And while there's still a lot of confusion in the aftermath, which we'll get into, the confidence that he had and the evolution that he had in his game and with his coaches at Extreme Couture was the biggest takeaway for me this week. Francis Ngannou, still the baddest man on the planet.
That was very well articulated, Dom.
Thanks.
My big takeaway from this main event, I can't shake the fact that Ciryl Gane looked mortal.
He did. That's true.
And again, going in, I bet money on Francis Ngannou. I thought Francis Ngannou was going to win this fight, but I thought he was going to catch Ciryl Gane.
Yeah.
I thought it was going, just with the power he possessed. I didn't expect him to out-grapple Ciryl Gane. I just didn't really foresee that. And Ciryl Gane apparently did, because he said afterwards that him and Fernand Lopez basically thought this was the only way Ngannou could win this fight, which tells me that
really,
these guys, yeah, they said because they asked him at the post-fight presser, they said, "Did you expect him to come out and grapple you like that?" And they said, "Yes." They said, "Of course, he said this was his only route to victory. He's like, I knew if this fight stood on the feet, I was going to win. And if he could get me
and
down."
he was. Wow.
So that just shows behind closed doors in the gym, these guys know a lot about one another. And I even saw some fighters tweeting like Kamaru Usman and Kevin Lee going, "Hey, how about that wrestling? Bet you guys didn't know about that." So maybe this has just been kind of a unspoken truth about Francis Ngannou's game, this like secret skill that he's possessed, and maybe the guy's just a lot more well-rounded than we thought. Now, I will just say, I feel like his size was a big advantage here when it came to that. He used his strength to really overpower Gane in some of those pivotal moments, some of those pivotal sprawls where he got top position after being on the bottom was a lot due to just simply his strength. Not that he didn't have good technique or anything, but that he was just a bigger, stronger opponent. It's a lot like when Blachowicz fought Adesanya, and Adesanya seemed a bit powerless at times.
Yep.
That was kind of Gane here. Gane, when he was on his back, Gane really couldn't get out of that position. And all the credit to Francis Ngannou for implementing that game plan, sticking to it. I mean, really, it might not even been the game plan going in. I mean, for 2 rounds, Francis was landing at like a 30% rate, which was half of what Gane was.
Yeah, Gane was like 65 plus.
I mean, Gane looked like he was just in a groove, was going to I was thinking, okay, we're going to get the 5-round Ciryl Gane experience.
Yeah.
And he's going to take that belt. But all credit to Ngannou for making the switch, if that was not the original game plan, I should say, and at least introducing it in round 3 and giving himself enough time to kind of win this fight convincingly at the end. It was so strange.
And the cardio held up too,
Well, he didn't look great cardio-wise. I mean, he was definitely tired, and especially on the feet, it really did, his credit to him for being able to wrestle in those 3 rounds.
Exactly. Yeah.
But once the fight was on the feet, rounds 3 through 5,
slow.
He was basically a prone target. His hands were down, breathing heavy, and wrestling is very much one of the most hardest things to do in MMA on terms of on your cardio.
Yeah.
But he did it well, and for Ciryl Gane, who I thought was the most well-rounded heavyweight we've ever seen. Now you look at this and you kind of go, well, there's some holes there. There's some holes. And, he did have the kickboxing background, but he looked much better on the ground in different fights. And I think it all came down to every fight so far in Ciryl Gane's career, he has dictated when and where that fight went.
Yes.
He dictated how it went there. When he wanted to go to the ground, he did. But that's because he was prepared to go to the ground because he knew what he wanted to do on the ground, and then he did it. Here, not the case. Ngannou slammed him, held him down, and he at times looked a little lost.
Perfect way to put it. Yeah.
So I still think Ciryl Gane is going to be here to stay for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
We may see this fight run back again. However, I think this is kind of what we'll transition.
Now we're getting into the future.
Let's talk about the immediate aftermath, Dominic.
And by immediate, we mean literally right after the winner was announced.
So I feel like my laugh right there was the laugh Dana did when he's like, I don't give a fuck.
That's exactly what it sounded like. And Dana sure didn't last night.
It was not Dana White that put the belt around Francis Ngannou's waist. And at first I was like, okay, maybe he had something to do. Maybe he was handling something. You know, he's got a lot of
busy
hands
man.
And a lot of,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Then he didn't show up to the post-fight press conference. And I don't know the last time he didn't show up to a UFC pay-per-view press conference, but I believe it was UFC 228, Dominic. And do you know what happened in the main event of that card?
You're going to have to enlighten me because my mind is blanking.
Tyron Woodley starched Darren Till, another matchup where Dana had a pretty clear favorite, and Darren Till going in and was not a big fan of the champion Tyron Woodley. So I believe that's the last time he missed a pay-per-view post-presser. I remember that specifically.
And quickly.
Yeah.
Well, just so everyone knows, Dana was in fact there to put the belt on Deiveson Figueiredo, which we'll get into next. But I just wanted to put that out there so you all know. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So, give me your thoughts on that first. Is that silence as deafening to you as it was to me?
Yes, they got together, right? The refs got their arms, and Bruce is getting ready to announce, and I saw Mick Maynard and I texted immediately in the group chat, and I said Dana isn't doing the belt. Noah emphasized that message in the group chat
because I was literally typing the same thing.
And I'm like, okay, this isn't good. This isn't good because all of this contract shit going into the fight was a mess. And well, I even said on Friday, I felt as if Ciryl was the champion going into this fight. It just felt like all the eggs were in the Ciryl Gane basket, in my opinion, in terms of the marketing and like where the UFC wanted to at least transition to for the future of the division. And Francis comes out, and, you know, maybe in the UFC's head, I'm not saying they wanted Francis to lose, but they might have been thinking we can do more with Gane if he becomes the champion, then we can just kind of get rid of Ngannou with all this contract crap. But, you know, worst case, Ngannou still wins, but he gets a big KO. It's a big deal. Everybody goes nuts. But not only did Francis win, he didn't get a big KO, Noah. He went 5 rounds. He utilized grappling. And it was just a bad combination for old Dana White in the UFC last night at UFC 270. And the fact that he didn't come to the press conference, I think, is super telling. The MMA Twitter community and the media was going nuts about this, seeing, you know, this is quite telling. You know, Dana's not here, so on and so forth. So I don't know what's going to happen here because I know Ngannou was asked by someone, you know, in 1 year from now, January of 2023, you can become a free agent, or are you okay with sitting out a year? And Francis goes, well, I fought 3 times in 3 years, so what's another year if I sit out? And then he kind of just goes on to where he doesn't have any immediate things on what he wants to do. And by the way, people, he said he had an MCL tear 3 weeks ago. Came into this fight with the torn MCL.
Well, let me ask you a question, Dominic, just to keep things on track. So are you under the impression that the bigger reason for the silence from Dana White, the bigger reason for the UFC and Dana White to kind of remove themselves from any sort of celebration of Ngannou, was it more because of the performance itself, the fight itself, or because of the iffy contract negotiation stuff coming in?
I think it is predominantly the iffy contract negotiations coming in, and when you match that with the way in which Ngannou won, it was not the formula they were looking for.
You know, it's so weird, Dominic, because this fight was so interesting to watch, but if I was someone who was not aware of all the stuff going in and didn't know anything about these two, I'd probably be pretty bored by the fight. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty dull fight. Not going to be a rewatchable one, I don't think.
Yeah.
But considering everything we know about these guys and all the hype behind it, it was very interesting to watch just because it was so unexpected, the
Yes.
turns it took and whatnot. So it held my interest. But for Dana White, I'm wondering if that's how he felt. If he was like, you know, when you get like a Usman versus Covington one, where it's two natural wrestlers and they have like this kind of sloppy kickboxing fight. We love the hell out of it because it's exciting. It's two guys just in each other's face, beating the shit out of each other. Even if it's not the most technical, it's awesome.
Yes.
But here you get two natural strikers having a wrestling match. Doesn't necessarily carry the same level of excitement. So I don't know if the bigger reason for this stuff in the aftermath is attributed to the contract stuff or to the fact that the fight went the way it did. But I will just say that I, for one, don't really see it the way you did in the lead up. I thought I was actually surprised that I felt like the marketing and everything was very even, very fair. I didn't really get the sense that Gane was champion at all. I felt like Dana himself in interviews was doing a pretty good job of talking up Ngannou. I mean, he even kind of himself used the contract negotiations as a reason for why this was such a big fight for Ngannou, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But I do think that this fallout, this immediate aftermath, is going to have longer term repercussions, and it's going to be a bit of a snowball effect here potentially. Because make no mistake, like I said on Friday, Ngannou would put all his chips on the table. He said, "I'm going all in. I'm betting on myself," and he won. But in order to win, there's got to be a payoff. There's got to be someone paying up for putting all those chips in. The UFC now need to give him the money he's looking for, the opportunities he's looking for. But are they going to use that performance and the sort of lackluster fight around it as a reason to try and not give him that? That's kind of the question I have moving forward.
Yeah, it's 100% going to be used. I mean, and when you get into that, it's like, okay, so if we do in fact just go a whole nother year without Francis Ngannou, what the hell do you do with the heavyweight title then, Noah? At that point,
it sounds like an interim title will be introduced again, and you're going to do John Jones versus Stipe.
Man,
which, don't get me wrong, I'll love the hell out of that fight and would be excited for it, but I wouldn't like it if it was under these circumstances.
And then we're getting to the point where, okay, so say that does happen, but then January 2023 rolls around, and Ngannou is officially done with his contract, and then he just chooses to relinquish the belt and leave. I mean, this is a situation we've not really ever been in the UFC, at least not with the top tier elite talents of Francis Ngannou, the face of a division.
Not a current sitting champion and one in the biggest weight class in the whole company.
Yes.
Let me ask you this then. If you had to predict right now, does he re-up with the UFC or does he wait out this contract and go elsewhere? What do you think he does right now?
In the immediate aftermath, I think he waits it out. I think we don't see him again for a whole year. And, too, he kept saying that he wants to do this boxing thing, and obviously he wanted the UFC to be a part of it. The UFC is going to want no part of that now. They're going to want no part of promoting Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury, especially after the way in which he won this fight. I just don't think that they're going to want to do it for him. I don't think they're going to view it as a good payoff for the company. So there is so much tension between Ngannou and his team in the UFC right now, and I thought it was going to get a little better, win or lose, because I thought if he won, he was going to have this huge performance, right, get a KO, or if he loses, then the UFC can Okay, let's move on. But no, he won and didn't put on an impressive performance. So I think there's even more tension now than there was going into the fight Saturday night, which is I wouldn't have thought that in a million years.
Here's a quote: "Time heals all wounds." I think Dana and the boys were licking their wounds last night.
Yeah,
I think they were a bit pouty, and the reason why, Dominic, is because I think they're going to end up paying him. That's why.
I hope so.
I think this is going to get worked out.
I do.
It might take a while. We might not see Ngannou again until August, September, October, which sucks. But I think eventually it gets worked out. Now the big thing is to me is that I still have a hard time believing that the UFC will commit to for Ngannou to have any sort of boxing fight with Tyson Fury or anybody really.
I'd be shocked.
But Tyson Fury seems to want it. He called him out again on Twitter last night.
Did he? After the win?
He said if you want to make some real money, come fight the Gypsy King or something like that. So
Yeah.
I think that it would be short-sighted of us to say never on that, only because if the heavyweight champion of boxing wants it, look at what happened with Mayweather and McGregor. Who would have ever thought that would have happened? And now I know Ngannou is not the same star as Mayweather, but Tyson Fury is not the same star as Mayweather.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't have to be that. It
It's
can
a
be
lower
its own
tiered
thing.
version of it. Yes.
And the UFC would still be able to have their part in helping promote it.
Yeah.
So you know what? I mean, as crazy as it sounds, Dominic, I think this gets worked out. And this might be a bit of me putting like a little bow on this. Maybe it's not going to go as clean. I understand right now it's like the night is darkest before morning, you know?
Yeah.
I just think they'll take some time. It'll get worked out. There might be some words shared. Dana might do some interviews here soon, and he may not say some very nice things about Ngannou's performance. But, like, I can just see it right now. Dana's going to go on some show or something. He's going to say, you're complaining about contracts, and you go out there and put a performance like that and have people booing you out of the octagon. I don't know. It reminds me of like the Tyron Woodley kind of a little bit situation. But I think eventually they sit down. The UFC recognizes he has the leverage because he's the heavyweight champion of the world.
Yeah.
How is it going to look if he doesn't lose that belt? He sits out for a year, leaves, thereby basically, yes, he would be relinquishing the belt. But then he leaves without being beaten. Like, you just lost your sitting heavyweight champion to go do whatever. And he can say, I'm the heavyweight champion of the UFC. I never got beat. So I think they come to their senses in a way. They give him the big time money he's looking for. And I think by giving him that money, they need to try to find the dividends to make that pay off. Thereby, Tyson Fury boxing fight might end up being kind of that chance to do that. And I'm going to make a prediction. We see Ngannou in the fall.
Okay.
Prediction number 1, John Jones. Prediction number 2, Ngannou boxes Tyson Fury in 2023.
Can I just pose one question off that real quick before we transition?
Sure.
Being that you foresee that boxing fight happening in 2023, does that mean to you that Francis would have to beat John Jones in order for that fight to happen?
Yes. Because there is no reason. That fight makes no sense.
If he loses.
If he's not the heavyweight champion of the world. It doesn't really make sense anyways, if we're being honest, but...
Well, yeah, but
in terms of like how you sell it, you sell the best boxer in the world, the champion of the heavyweight division in boxing, going up against the number 1 contender in the UFC, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's not. Maybe they don't even. Maybe they do the interim title fight in that same time frame, July, August. September, John Jones, Stipe, and then sometime beginning of 2023, Ngannou boxes Fury, and then he'll end up having to fight the winner of that interim title fight. Now, I know that doesn't sound great because they have a division held up, but that's how that shit goes. Remember how long McGregor, the stuff with, I mean, how long did he hold on to that belt at lightweight without defending
Over a full year.
Yeah, I mean, it was well over.
Yeah.
He wanted at UFC 205. He was relinquished, or I guess taken, stripped from him at UFC 223 when Khabib fought Ally Quina.
Yeah.
That's 18 months, essentially.
Yeah.
I
Crazy.
mean, it can happen.
But for what it's worth, I hope that what you just said in terms of the UFC and Francis coming to terms, I hope that is the case. I do.
Yeah. It might be a bit of a peachy, like, sunny, a picture perfect ending, but I really believe the UFC, it's better to have Ngannou in-house than anywhere else. It's just,
Yes.
I hope they come to their senses, though.
Amen.
Co-main event. Dominic, the third
These
fight,
two.
the trilogy between Deiveson, Figueiredo, and Brandon Moreno goes the distance for the second of those 3 times. This time, Deiveson, Figueiredo, Dominic, and New once again wins back his UFC men's flyweight title from Brandon Moreno. It was a unanimous decision. When the judges' scorecards were read off, how did you feel about the decision? Were you surprised? Did you agree with it? Did you score it any other way?
I was stunned. I was stunned at the fact that they were clean. Everyone had the same scorecard. Couldn't believe it. We have seen fights that are much less competitive that have had 10 times worse scorecards than this one. Because at the end of this 25 minutes, didn't have a damn clue who won the fight. I texted and said, you know what? It's a draw. Let's just somehow score the 5th round a tie. We'll book it a 4th time. Fuck it. We'll do it that way. But then they come out and go, unanimous. And all 3 said 48-47. I was like, I couldn't believe it. It was like, I was shocked. I really was shocked. I thought the scorecards are going to be all over the place. I did.
I agree.
Can you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I completely agree. That's what I thought. And when it happened, so when I saw the scorecards that way, I said, oh, okay, Moreno's retaining. I don't know why that's what went through my head. Like, again, I didn't score the fight for him. I couldn't score this fight. I couldn't.
No.
Like, I kind of tried, but I couldn't.
I had it 2-2 going into the 5th, but all 4 rounds could have went like either way, really. But then the 5th round, dude, that is one of the most competitive rounds I've ever watched in the UFC ever.
So I was watching it with my mom and sister, and they're not like big fans, but they my mom used to watch a lot of the big time boxing fights back in the day. Actually, her and my dad, I've talked about this. They used to rent the like very early UFC. So like, she's kind of an OG compared to us, but
right.
Not like big fans or anything. And Maycee, my sister, she goes, who do you think's winning before round 5? And I said, I don't know, but I said, whoever wins this round, I think is going to win this fight.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's kind of how it happened, I think. I didn't look at the scorecards. I know they're probably out there, but I'd be curious to see, even though they all were clean in terms of 48-47, I wonder if they all scored the same rounds for the same fighter.
Right.
I'll be curious. I didn't look that up. I saw the main event one, which, again, the 49-46 didn't make any sense. But
yeah.
Regardless, Deiveson is now the champion again, Dominic.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, he was, pretty decent underdog for this one. And I got to say, this is one of the, things that sucks about not being able to do the show, live on Friday.
Yeah.
Is that, there's a lot that happens between Wednesday evening and Friday morning when this gets released. And the biggest of that is the weigh-ins and even the pre-fight press conference. By the way, one of the worst press conferences I think I've ever.
I turned it off.
4 guys who aren't the most natural English speakers in the world. A lot of people asking a lot of stupid questions.
Yeah.
No offense to the French, but your representatives at this press conference did not make you look very good. But anyways, the weigh-in specifically, Deiveson Figueiredo looked amazing. I mean,
especially for his standards.
Yes. Now, when he weighed in, he still looked like a dead man walking, but just comparatively,
yes,
he did it on his own power. He was by that night, when they were doing the the weigh-ins in person or whatever, what do they call that? Like where they
ceremonial weigh-in.
Yeah, ceremonial weigh-ins. He was bouncing around. He looked very energetic. And it seems, Dominic, that there was an emphasis for Figueiredo to take seriously his cardio training as well as his dieting for this fight over just, really working on the power. And I think by doing that, it actually helped his power in the fight because these shots, compared to like the first fight, that was Figueiredo's better showing of the two before this one. He was landing a lot of amazing, powerful shots in that first fight, but Moreno just wouldn't go down.
Yeah.
He just wouldn't go down. And here, he dropped Moreno a couple times.
I think he had 3 knockdowns, 2 or 3.
Stunned him. And I don't know in the first fight if he had won.
Yeah.
I mean, Moreno would not go down in that first fight. So I think the power was much improved because he came in healthier, he came in leaner, and he was faster in the cage. But Brandon Moreno also, man, just looked so poised. He looked like a champion in there. Really fought with the confidence of a champion. He fought with the bravado of a champion. And even though he lost this fight, I mean, really nobody lost this fight because let's be clear. I have my apologies, my sincerest apologies to people like Alexandre Pantoja, Askar Askarov, or even Kaikar France, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
This fight must be run back a 4th time.
I mean, it is 1-1 to 1. 1 win for Moreno, 1 win for Figgy, and a draw. You have to do it a 4th time. They both want it a 4th time. When Deiveson Figueiredo wins the belt, and one of the first things he says is, let's do it a 4th time. Say less, bud. You guys have delivered every single fight. These two were born to fight one another, is what it feels like. They are both so dead even in their skills and the way that their styles can clash in the octagon. It is one of the best rivalries in recent memory, and it needs to be ran back a 4th time. No ifs, no ands, and no buts.
And I can't remember if we really talked about this on Friday or if we've done this on a roundtable. I'm sure we've, at least off recording, we have talked about like the potential of Figgy to win this fight and what that would, do you do a 4th fight right away? And I bet going in, we both would have said no.
Yeah,
no, you got Pantoja was supposed to get this opportunity and he got passed over. You got to give a guy like him or Askarov or Kaikar France, whoever wins that fight in March, the next shot. And then you watch the fight, though, and you just go, God, it was so close, though. Yeah. It was such a close fight. I mean, there was no losers here. Both guys they were at the top of their athletic performance. And
unreal.
It was a joy to watch. I mean, it really
was.
Just, again, started out, I wouldn't say slow, but it was more of a finding your range for about a round and a half. And then once those guys got a little more comfortable with, I guess, the type of fight they were going at, it wasn't the level. The first fight is still the best one.
Just like wild, right?
But this fight was, I mean,
they were both flowing.
This has got to be one of those that's going to be a sneaky fight of the year at the end of the year, potentially.
Oh, yeah, man. What a joy to watch.
It felt a lot like Jan versus Sandhagen in a way. Like just a very high-level fight.
Edge of your seat, you know, waiting on a moment, and then a moment would happen, but then Moreno would bounce back and land shots, vice versa. I mean, God. Whew.
Yeah, all in all, you got to do the 4th fight. There's just no question. Anything else, I will not accept. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because if they book Deiveson versus Pantoja next, how could I be upset at that? Pantoja deserves a title shot,
right?
But you got to settle this score. There's got to be a guy that truly separates himself as like, I am the champion.
Yes.
And the interesting wrinkle is that I keep waiting for Deiveson to make that jump to 135, and then after this, I'm like, maybe he's again. Long term, I don't know if he'll be able to keep this up, but he's the champion again. He definitely ain't going anywhere now. So it was an awesome fight. It was the best fight of the main card, at least. One of the best fights on the whole card. I think that the crowd, the way that they exploded for Brandon Moreno, and the way that they fucking hated Deiveson Figueiredo shows that these two, despite the fact that the press conference, the trash talk, it's a little cringy at times because they don't speak the best English. But at the end of the day, when they're fighting, it shows through their. Whatever. Davison's trying to play up the heel stuff, and Moreno is such a natural, just hero, like a natural guy to root for. But when they fight, it's clear that these are two guys that want nothing more but to be the best in the world.
Yes.
And that's why Anaheim, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because booing Deiveson Figueiredo after he put up that kind of performance,
unacceptable.
What the fuck is wrong with you? I mean, I get it. The guy was, he was talking a lot of shit before the fight. But come on, man. They went to war, and then he offers a fourth fight immediately.
In Mexico. the Cajunes.
And you're going to boo him?
Yeah.
That just bothered me, but whatever. All in all, this doesn't take away from the fact the fight was awesome. Can't say anything about Deiveson getting the belt. It was so funny. I saw, I forget who it was, if it was Bronstetter or one of those guys that I have like the notifications on for, or Okamoto or someone, tweeting at the end of the fight, how close it was before the scorecards got read. And the first comment, the top comment, was someone going, yeah, definitely nobody should be able to call this one a robbery. Yeah. And then the literal next top comment was someone going, complete robbery, Moreno should have won.
Yeah, this was the furthest thing from a robbery.
I think there's just people that are going to call it a robbery no matter what.
That word gets passed around like candy on Halloween, man.
Let's get into the rest.
Shall we?
Let's start with Michel Pereira and Andre Fiallo. They had a pretty fun scrap. It went to unanimous decision. Michel Pereira gets the win. It's a fight that kind of went under the radar at the end of the night because, again, we're going to talk about the first two fights of the main card and really the prelims. So many finishes up to that point.
Yeah.
That we kind of thought, at least for me, I thought I was in for a quick night. I said, this card might be over here in a couple hours, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah.
Then this fight went to a decision, and it was a very competitive fight. And I'm like, oh, okay. This was a good one. But then you follow that up with 2 5-round title fights after, and it kind of gets a bit forgotten in all this. So I'm going to try to piece together what I remember about it, Dominic, and you can fill in the gaps. And it starts with Andre Fiallo looked very comfortable in round 1. He looked like a guy who belonged, for someone who's fought high-level MMA but was making his debut in the UFC. He didn't seem to shy away from the moment. While Michel Pereira is the wild man he is, he was feinting a lot. He was bouncing around on his feet a lot. He was moving around a lot in round 1. But I thought it was a good round for Fiallo.
Oh, yeah.
Then you saw the skill level take over. Michel Pereira did start landing some big shots that were hurting Fiallo.
Yeah.
And again, it's like anytime Pereira lands a big shot and the crowd explodes, he just does something that's kind of stupid. He throws a flying knee that's ill-advised, and Fiallo gets a body lock. That happens multiple times in this fight.
Yeah.
But I can't help but love what you see from the guy, because then he does the backflip kick thing, and it actually landed. I couldn't believe it. But basically, Michel kind of separated himself as the fight went on, and then round 3, towards the end, he started to gas a little bit. Fiallo had a few moments in round 3, but clear-cut decision for Pereira. But And while Pereira, again, he's probably knocking on the door for a top 15 fight, I think Fialho proved that he belongs in the UFC.
Yeah, that was the bigger takeaway. I mean, Pereira now on a 4-fight win streak. Good for him. He's an entertaining fighter. Should probably fight top 15 next or be right there. But Fialho, in terms of like the takeaways for this, he deserves to be in the UFC. Real tough guy, good striking, just a good all-around skill set. So I'm excited to see kind of how he gets matched up. Well, really, I'm excited for how both get matched up next. But it was a very fun fight. That was the storyline of this whole card, right? Was how are these guys and girls that are debuting going to look? Because there were 8 people that made their debut last night in the UFC, and for the most part, all of them, win or lose, at least held their all, and that's all you can ask for. So.
Correct. Following that, Said Nurmagomedov, no
Oh
relation to Khabib. He gets, I believe, the 4th fastest submission in UFC history in 47 seconds over Cody Stamann. Now, Dominic, we had both kind of picked Said, if you kind of on the betting side of things. If you watched out, check out the Nosebleeds. We've released those episodes every Thursday evening, by the way. But
shameless plug.
But we were, I think, pretty high on Said in this fight, and he was a sizable favorite. But I started to see a lot of people in the community kind of picking Cody Stamann in the lead-up, believing in the competition level he had fought. Maybe said that he was a bit better than maybe people were thinking, while Said was a bit unproven. His activity had been a little bit on the lower side. But Said came in there and made quick work of Cody Stamann. So what does this mean for the potential ceiling of Said Nurmagomedov?
It means it's very high because, I mean, people don't do this to Cody Stamann. Cody Stamann has been in there with so many top guys and went the distance with so many tough guys. He's beaten tough guys. But for Said to come in and make it look easy, like it was another UFC person making a debut, that's what it felt like here. This was ultra impressive performance to pull off. It looked like a Darce. They ended up rolling it at a guillotine, but it was just the way he locked it in so quickly, so seamlessly. Cody never stood a chance to even get out of it. This is just another guy that is now introduced into this insanely stacked 135-pound division. And truthfully, I mean, he's 15-2 now. I think he would be 4-1 in the UFC. I mean, I'm not opposed if he gets a guy with a number next to his name next. I'm just going to be honest with you.
I mean, you're so right, and yet there's so many guys on the outside of the top 15 at bantamweight that deserve an opponent with a number next to their name. So I will just say this was a very Zabit-like showing from Said Nurmagomedov, and he is quickly kind of becoming that bantamweight Zabit in my eyes. Nurmagomedov, the last name, I get it. No relation to Khabib, but still comes from that area of the world where grappling is such a focus, the wrestling is such a focus, and yet his best skill is his kickboxing, Dom.
Yeah, and he's damn good.
But he still has the wrestling background.
Yeah,
and you see the submissions here. I mean,
dangerous.
He's dangerous.
Yes, yes, exactly.
I think that's the best way we can just move on after that.
Yes, on to the next one.
We're going to get into a couple guys that we might be seeing them at the end of the year for our Newcomer of the Year award. And Michael Morales, the 22-year-old phenom, makes promise or good on his promise in his debut with the TKO over Trevin Giles, round 1. 4 minutes and 6 seconds in. Didn't come without a little adversity.
Mm-hmm.
Trevin Giles looked very good early, able to get the fight to the ground. Looked like he stunned Morales, I think, one of the opening shots he threw. But Morales gets back to his feet. And once he landed a really clean shot, man, Giles just couldn't recover. He tried. He kind of, it seemed like for about a minute there at the end, he was kind of on wobbly legs. So he was really trying to work to stay in that fight. But, man, Michael Morales, when he hurts you, he has got a great ability to find that finish. He gets it done in round 1, Dominic. What do you think about Michael Morales?
I mean, holy shit. I understand Dana's hype for this kid on the Contender Series this year. And to come in and get a finish like that at being 22 years old and all this hype against a guy that's been in there with some tough opponents in Trevin Giles. That says a lot for the potential that you hold. And what is he? He's 13-0 now, 11 wins via finish. And I mean, he just looks like a player, and especially at welterweight, where yes, it's not like one of the most stale. I still believe that middleweight is, but it still is. Every division needs fresh life, right? And welterweight has been getting a few, and now welcome Michael Morales into this as well. And I know he's super young. I'm not saying we're launched him into the rankings or anything, but I'm saying in the next 2, 3, 4 years, this kid is going to be a legitimate player, and I am allowed to call him a kid because I'm older than him. So I'm very excited for the potential of Michael Morales.
We're at that point in our lives now.
Yes.
Start calling people kid.
Oh, boy.
Trevin Giles, though, we'll give him just a little shout out. This was his first move to 170.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think with this performance, do you think he takes another fight at 170, or was the cut too much for that chin to hold up, or is this just Michael Morales is just that good?
I think it was more on Michael. I thought Trevin looked pretty solid. I mean, he didn't look drained or anything at weigh-ins. And, again, he had his moments even in this fight. And I just think that was just how good Morales is. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Giles take another fight at welterweight, especially like if he at the end of the day feels undersized at middleweight. Why not at least give it a couple tries down at 170, so long as you're not draining yourself for the weight cut.
I agree. Following that at bantamweight as well. A lot of bantamweights on this card. And Victor Henry making cash-in on being the biggest underdog on the card.
Yep.
As he gets the unanimous decision win over Ione Barcelos. I mean, both guys I think are 34 or 35 coming in here. Victor Henry making his debut. Coached by Josh Barnett, former UFC heavyweight champion. Mm-hmm. And Barcelos has been a mainstay of this bantamweight division for a long time, been one of the most underrated competitors in the division. One of those guys that we tend to cling to is like, to show how talented a division is that he's a guy that's never been ranked. But he's so good. And then Victor Henry comes in here.
Wow.
They went to war, but Victor Henry comes out on top. What was this fight like for you watching it the first time?
I mean, this fight was supposed to happen, I think, at the last card of the year of 2021, and I was like, oh man, yeah, if we could bet, I would take Barcelos here on short notice against Victor Henry, but he got 2 more weeks to prepare, and damn, what a debut for him, the biggest underdog on the card that got the victory, and he looked so good for all 3 rounds. It was a 29-28, I believe, times 3. So Barcelos, I think, did get around, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been a 30-27 for Victor, actually.
I think it was 30-27 across the board.
I think it was, now the more I think about it.
Which, it was a closer fight than that. Like, Barcelos, really, you could have made an argument that Barcelos took 2 of those 3 rounds.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, if Barcelos had gotten his hand raised, I would have felt like, not a robbery, but it wouldn't have felt right. So even though you could have technically made an argument on a round-by-round basis, I think if you judge the fight as a whole, Victor Henry more clearly won the fight.
Yeah, he had the way more damaging shots. His output was insane. The pace of this fight was just super high level and fast-paced, and it was all on the feet for 15 straight minutes. Great debut for Victor Henry. Dana had kept saying throughout the build-up, and like in his If You Don't Know Now, You Know segment, this kid should have debuted a long time ago in the UFC. He's finally getting his chance here, and he makes way of it in his debut.
Another contender for newcomer of the year, Jack Della Maddalena, gets the TKO in round 1 over Pete Rodriguez, 2 minutes, 59 seconds, Dominic. Did you get everything you were hoping for and then some with Della Maddalena?
I absolutely did, Noah. This was the performance that I had come to expect in his debut. And then the fact that he got the finish that he didn't get on the Contender Series added the cherry on top. I mean, Della Maddalena's striking was so impressive to me this past year on the Contender Series, and it looked even more polished now as he continues to train. He's got power. He's got precision. He's so quick and elusive the way he moves about the octagon. It was an incredible performance, one in which he made, honestly, easy work of the undefeated Pete Rodriguez.
Yeah, you said your piece about Jack, so I won't double up. because I agree with everything you're saying. But Pete Rodriguez, a little bit too much too soon, but I liked what I saw from him, if I'm being honest. I thought his striking looked very clean.
Tough. He's a gamer.
Obviously, he got put away, but I just think it was a little too much too soon. Maybe he doesn't get another crack in the UFC right away, but I do think you see him very shortly to be potentially a real guy in the UFC. I think he could really come in here and compete here in a couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. I like that.
Matt Frivola. He not only TKOs Genaro Valdez, but he TKO'd Dominic's parlay as well.
Yes.
3 minutes, 15 seconds around number 1. This fight was absolutely bonkers.
Crazy. And it only lasted 3 minutes.
I mean, I think there was 6 knockdowns in this fight in 3 minutes. 5 of them were to our unfortunate loser, Valdez. But, I mean, really, Valdez, even when he would get dropped and he would get back up, he was landing some clean shots on Frivola.
Yeah.
But did you have any? I'm going to just ask because I saw some people making some jokes online about our referee here. Did you think the stoppage was good? Like, were you okay with him letting Valdez, I know drop that many times, but did you feel like he was doing enough to keep himself in the fight until the very finish?
For 95% of it, yes, I felt Valdez was doing enough, but then it did get to a point where I was like, all right, parlay aside, they probably should maybe stop this fight here. And then Mark Beltran finally did. I think one of the biggest factors in why he didn't is because literally the fight before this, Vanessa Demopoulos got one punch KO'd nearly, and woke up when she landed onto the canvas, and then was able to pull off a submission like 30 seconds later. So I think that played a factor, being that it was the immediate next fight. But it's still, man, it was very fascinating, very fun fight. Valdez was 10-0 coming into this, so keep your head up. He trains with Brandon Moreno, so I think we'll see him again. Matt Frivola needed this win, too, for what it's worth. Yeah. He was on a 2-fight skid. Another Contender Series guy from a couple years ago. It was a war.
How good is Terrence McKinney?
Yeah, right.
Referee Mike Beltran, I think, had the same. I think he had the same parlay you did, Dominic. I think that's
he might have.
No, I see. Look, we're joking about this, but if this had been Herb Dean,
yeah, here we go again.
I'm not going to do it. I want to have fun here because I think that there was enough. Valdez showed enough to where you could reasonably, I guess, let it go. But I think around the 5th time he got dropped,
you're like, all right.
It's. I think in boxing, and I know that I don't want MMA to take this on, but I'm just saying, I think in boxing, if you get dropped 3 times in a round, I think it's over. Is that am I wrong on that? I don't know. I don't know boxing enough, but I believe it's you get dropped a certain amount of times in a round.
Right.
It's just done. So 5 times in 3 minutes, I was like, oof. I was like, this guy. But then he kept getting back up. I'm like, oh
I know. And it felt like when he would get up, he would still land on Frivola. I thought it was going to be like a Pat Barry, Czech Congo situation. It was crazy.
And just think, Dom, if he had won, you would have had, a nice little payday. Let's just put it that way.
Plus 875. It's fine. Valdez, you're a fucking animal. I love it.
Yeah. The first fight that we're going to talk about here is that fight you were talking about, the come from behind victory for Vanessa Demopoulos. Gets the submission win over Silvana Gomez Juarez. 2 minutes, 25 seconds around number 1. But yes, that's right. It's probably the quickest time for a fight that we can say was a comeback. Because she was nearly one punch KO'd, comes back and gets a submission win. What a story here for Vanessa, right?
Oh, yeah, it was awesome, man. She got her first UFC win. She's really been in Invicta. She's fought a ton of top-level competition. And then to face adversity like this, almost get knocked out. That right hook was vicious that put her down. She literally said in a post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, I woke up when I landed on the canvas. So what a way for her to kind of weather the storm, pull off a great armbar submission. Her post-fight interview with Joe Rogan, she was so happy. It was her first UFC win. She jumped up into his arms. You could just tell how big of a deal it was for her, and that made it feel that much more special. A feel-good moment.
Well, yeah, she made a commitment for this fight because she was a former exotic dancer, quit that job essentially 6 to 8 weeks before this fight to commit to this camp, I believe. And, I always like a story like that where not that someone had to quit their day job to commit to a camp, but just that they kind of went all in, like we were talking about with Ngannou earlier, like she bet on herself and, obviously it wasn't easy. She had to come from behind here to get that win, but I just think that's a great story, and to see her excitement afterwards, I was very touched by it. So shout out to Vanessa Demopoulos and Silvana though. That right hand was vicious, girl. So
oh my.
Hopefully next fight maybe you can put them away after the first one, right? Yeah.
Well said.
But that's gonna wrap it up for this weekend recap edition of the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast. Give us your thoughts on all the action that took place Saturday. Any of the fight announcements we talked about that interest you? Paddy Pimblett, what's going on? What's going on?
Yeah, Francis in the UFC. But please
give us your thoughts. Go over to Sherry Yuri Prohaska. What are your thoughts on that type of fight? What will be the co-main event of that card? What's going to be the co-main event of UFC 272? What's this nonsense about? Oh, we got fights booked out till May. Guy can't just come in and say he wants to fight.
Baloney.
There's a main event spot or a co-main event spot opened on that card. Don't give me this shit about, we got fights booked till May 7th.
Yeah.
Whatever. But let us know all your thoughts. So,
yes, please.
Until then, we will still, even though the UFC doesn't have an event next Saturday, we're still going to have normal preview show on Friday. We got 2 very interesting cards to talk about. And that's going to be Bellator 273, the heavyweight champion versus champion fight.
Yeah, that's true.
This is Ryan Bader versus Valentin Moldavsky. I'm excited for it, but it is a bit like your mom saying we got Francis Ngannou versus Ciryl Gane at home. So you got that, and then you got the Eagle FC debut in the United States. The card that we have has been our favorite card and then our least favorite card of all time.
And promotion.
Depending on the week. So very cautiously excited to watch that one. But until then, Dominic, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Find me on Twitter, on Instagram at dslee14. More importantly, go follow, go engage, go interact with the show on Twitter, on Instagram at BAJ_MMA podcast.
And for me, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram at ntbaker_. If you go to the link in my bio, it will take you to a link tree, which presents you a list of links to all the platforms the podcast is on, along with social media platforms. So that includes, but it's not limited to, the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. It's all on there. And there's a couple links for today's sponsor,
Anchor. Oh, look at you. Anchor. Shout out.
First, leaving a voice message. Do it, people.
Someone's got to be the first one, and I'm getting pissed off.
Someone's got to pick up. We're ringing. Hello?
Yeah.
You there?
Yeah.
Also, there's a link on there if you want to become a supporter of the podcast. That just provides us with a few dollars a month. All that money goes back into improving the quality of the podcast. But that's it. We're out. And we'll see y'all on Friday.